Real quick, has a chick ever offered you sexual favors to get out of a ticket? No. She never showed a titty or nothing? She never leaned forward suggestively?
You're in the wrong city. Welcome back to an episode of Careful Boys. We have Aram Choe with us, Lieutenant.
Lieutenant Aram Choe.
So you were saying that Jiu-Jitsu is more suitable for police work than Krav Maga?
Absolutely. I mean, optically, it just looks a lot better, right? Krav is striking based, and there's definitely a place for that. We do get in fights. But most of the time we want to get them, the point of the fight is to overcome their resistance and arrest them. And there's no better art that's suitable for getting someone into a control.
Thing going like this.
Yeah, if I want to take down a bad guy, I'm sitting guard, bud.
But it's not like a required thing in the force that everyone has to like learn Jiu-Jitsu.
It is.
Come at me, bro!
Hey, come on,
Come
dude.
on, let's
You wanted
go.
to fight, right?
All right, just arrest me. I'm sorry. Just arrest me.
There is an offensive component to it, but
I haven't seen that.
don't get it. But almost everything gets to the ground, right? Especially when you cuff somebody, you're either against a wall or on the ground. And you see it in Instagram and YouTube videos where you literally see two officers pushing and pulling against each other, defeating the purpose. And we want to get everybody on the same page, so we're standardizing takedowns. We're standardizing two-man officer takedowns.
Being able to pin somebody and hold them down.
Yeah.
Well, you were saying because response times, are you talking about backup? Yeah. A minute 30 to get backup, or a minute 30 police response time in El Monte?
No, well, that too. Actually, we have a fast response time. But like, if an officer's on a fight and calls it out on the radio, the average amount of time it takes for a backup to get there is about a minute and a half, and that's our city.
A minute and a half.
There are other cities because we're the size of a postage stamp, right? 10 and a half square miles. So if you get 10 cars covering that area, we can get there pretty fast. But there are some podunk areas where you're fighting for 20 minutes, right? You're on your own because your nearest backup is the next county over. Yeah. And so what we want to do is tell people you can really stave off an attacker. You can outlast them with conditioning and good defensive techniques, right?
It's good pressure.
Like fishing.
But what if there's what if they're like on angel dust or something, and then they're like super powerful?
Yeah, PCP was really prevalent, especially when I was starting in the late 90s.
Don't they kick like down car doors and run away and stuff?
Yeah, what if they have gamma radiation?
You know, if you know how to defend yourself and you're like, hey, I just need a few minutes for my backup to get here, you can do that with Jiu-Jitsu.
Have you ever had to arrest a guy that also knew Jiu-Jitsu? It was countering you?
Not yet, but it's coming, right? I mean, we down the street from our department is UFC gym, and if you ever walk in there and see who's training in the octagon, it's gangsters.
Mm-hmm. Really? Yeah. They know how to.
Yeah, and they're teaching it in prisons. So I told you guys I worked the jails for 5 years as a deputy. And the deputies, the inmates have structured workouts. They're doing burpees.
That's all because of the Mexican Mafia, huh?
Mexican Mafia has a lot of influence over that.
Damn, for real?
Yeah, the head honcho was a former Marine, I think. Yeah. So he runs, they have their own boot camp to get into Mexican Mafia, and they run it under wraps somehow.
Do they have
crazy
access to jiu-jitsu instructionals? Because if they do, we're in trouble.
Like
Danaher? If they have Danaher, if they have John Danaher instructionals, we're in trouble. But
now you can get a degree while you're incarcerated. They have access to the internet, so whatever they want to learn.
You don't like that?
What? Yeah. Dude, that's like boarding school. What the fuck?
UC Irvine just graduated like 21 inmates from the CDC.
That's insane.
Didn't they have like at the Disney concert hall, they had a graduation for like juvenile detention centers, and then they had a riot?
Oh, no way.
They had a rumble in the Disney concert hall?
I mean, theoretically, it's all great programs.
Heard they got disrespected.
Yeah, so that's how it happens, dude. That's usually how it happens.
It was during the part in Fantasia where Mickey Mouse started making sparkly like stuff, and then
fighting the dragon.
So like, how do you feel personally, like your own personal opinion? Because I feel like when we like the average cops that we see out in the world, they don't look like they do jiu-jitsu. They don't look like they do a whole lot. How does it feel to like know that?
They don't even look like they work out a lot.
Yeah, they look like they do a lot of bubblegum chewing and donut eating.
They're very accurate. I would say 80%.
What do police like you, like that are so active in trying to like get your skill set up there, think about that side of the force?
Yeah, so it's influence, right? The greater influence you have, the more people you can reach. So yeah, at my rank, I don't need to. I don't go on the streets, right? Yeah. I do on a critical incident, but most of the time I'm sitting behind a desk. So I don't need to train, but I do because so many people at my agency look at me as a leader figure at work. Mm-hmm. It's if I'm preaching that you need to train, I better be training. So I started late. I'm 47 years old and I started 4 years ago. And I wish I had discovered jiu-jitsu, or I wish it was accessible to me earlier than that. But I started late, but I don't make any bones about it because I'm like, you have no excuse. If I started in my mid 40s as a 20-something-year-old, you should be doing the same. And when we do our like annual qualification, when they're like sweating during the warm-ups and I'm not even breathing heavy, it's very like, well, how do I get to your level? Like, train jiu-jitsu, right? And you know, my reach now on social media is pretty decent to the point where I don't know why cops are allergic to social media, but I'm one of the few cops that put myself out there, and I think people want to be able to ask these questions. So I'm transparent. I'm like, I'm an open book, ask whatever you want, but I will post about jiu-jitsu because I want anybody that's listening to realize if you're going to enter this job, especially if you're a 5'4", 120-pound woman, you better learn jiu-jitsu in this job because a 250-pound parolee is just going to squash you.
I got a question, open book. Tell me about the thin blue line.
So, great question. I actually, I get asked that a lot because we have stickers, we have flags, right? So there's also a thin yellow line, a thin green line, a gold line, and they're representative of different things, military, dispatchers, fire. And in the 80s, there was a movie called The Thin Blue Line. And I think it was based in NYPD, and it was like the code of silence, right? Hey, what happens behind these closed doors, the public doesn't need to know. You're either on this side, it's us versus them. And we all know what happened in the 90s where we couldn't have departments like that. But that blue line stayed, but it still has a negative connotation because of it. But it's morphed into what it is more people who display the blue line are supporters of cops. They're not cops. There's a bunch, especially in California. Once you leave California, it's a different story. But in California, you wouldn't know an off-duty cop from a cop because they're not the ones wearing the blue line caps. Because we have targets on our back. We don't want people to know what we do. And that's why there's a big running joke when you ask a firefighter, what do you do? Firefighter. When you ask a cop, what do they do? They'll make up whatever, right? So the people that you see out like with the blue line caps or police stickers, they're 99% sure they're not cops.
They're like family members or something.
Supporters.
How legit is it though in policing? Like the idea that if you see something fucked up from a fellow cop, you're not going to report anything.
It was prevalent in the 90s, for sure. And then with technology, that changed the game. Because
Talking about body cams?
body cams, surveillance cams, Ring doorbells, right? There's a whole integrity aspect. Before, integrity wasn't a big component of the background process. They wanted warm bodies to do the job. Now, when we do a background, we look at your integrity, right? We look at your social media for bias and discrimination. We talk to your former relationships. We talk to your groups of friends, your current employers, and we want to know because integrity is huge. And when it comes to sticking up for another officer, you better think twice if you're inclined to do that because if there's evidence pointing that you colluded or you knew or you ignored what happened and you're defending him, you're just as liable. And you have to assume that there's eyes and cameras watching you everywhere you go. So you got to be pretty buttoned up in law enforcement. And it's harder to do the job than it was when I came up. These guys have a whole new set of challenges. You can't drive down the street without a Ring doorbell pointing at you. And that's just the civilian cameras. Now we have Big Brother watching us. We have government cameras everywhere. And most of
So you're saying like people got away with corruption much easier in the 90s? Because it was like, how do you even catch them doing it? Oh.
It's just their word versus, you know, but whereas now we have technology.
Yeah. And you just said there's city cameras that are government owned that are everywhere?
Yeah, when I told you guys about that pursuit at the airport, so we picked that car up from a camera called the Flock system. So most municipalities have something called Flock or Vigilant, but basically they're the same thing. They're traffic cameras. Cameras posted at most entrances into the city, and then on top of that, businesses can opt in. Like, hey, I want a camera on my door. So in exchange for getting surveillance on your property, you give the police access to it too. So it's a force multiplier. People want cops to be everywhere, but it's impossible. But with more agencies putting programs, real-time crime centers is what they're calling them. So there's actually a room, and there's people that are cops or community service officers that are really good at monitoring things, sitting in a room, and they'll see a crime as it happens, and they'll radio it, and we can be there, as opposed to waiting for the victim to get victimized and then calling us. We can be there a lot quicker. So it's a force multiplier. The other token of that, people are like, I don't want Big Brother watching me. So it's right now, it's a little bit of controversy because it's like, is it for the greater benefit of the masses and push forward, or is it going to be we have to satisfy the few that don't want that, right? And I would argue that if it leads to better response time and safer communities, we should have that. But people are saying, oh, well, you're turning us into a communist state and stuff like that. And sure, valid arguments. But if you're using it strictly for the purpose of enforcement and protection, I think it's a great thing to have. And now with the Public Records Act in not just California, the rest of the country, those are all public records. So if someone accuses us of using it for illicit purposes, they can just subpoena those records and we have to submit them to them.
What up, guys? Thank you for watching us for so long. If you like what we do, please support our Patreon. Joe, tell them what we have to offer.
So every week you get 2 videos. One never released director's cut, and another one 2 half for YouTube, Patreon only. Every freaking week you get that. And you get access to our Discord where you can come chat with us.
And ask us questions that become episodes here, because we're gonna answer them and we're gonna take it seriously, and we wanna give you the responses that you want. So come stay connected with us, join our Patreon, click the description below for full details.
Damn, that is an interesting argument, right? Because then you're like, well, do you want to be a surveillance state? And what happens when the state has too much power and there's no oversight? But then on the flip side, if there is transparency and the people are allowed to see what's happening and criticize that, then is it actually harmful? Because if the public is actually in control of the public forum, right? Like, or if they can actually control what's happening and vote in what's happening, then is it really a state? Like the state's in power? I don't know. That sounds like people's in power. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I mean, in the UK, for example, using an extreme example to illustrate a point, I think it's one camera or 30 cameras for every one person or something like that is what they set up over there. I don't think we're anywhere near that. Obviously, we're too spread out. But where would you see the line there? Like as a law enforcement officer?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I see it as a huge advantage for law enforcement. It's a crime deterrent. When people go into a community and they know there's potentially cameras in that area, it deters crime. Just like when you see a black and white patrolling, that's the biggest reason why you see like entities that are proactive and not. So fire departments, right? Why aren't firefighters out in the communities? Because they're not going to deter a fire from happening, right, by being there. Right. Whereas a police officer, they patrol and they're in the community. Someone's going to think twice when they see a black and white roll by or when they see a cop working a foot beat. So that's why we want to be out there as much as possible. And that's the same thing. That's why I call it a force multiplier. When you know, we're public about our cameras. We'll say there's a camera here, there's a surveillance area. And we want, with respect to the Fourth Amendment, which is right to privacy, search and seizure, we want to respect that as much as possible. That's why it's not in buildings, and they're all in public areas. And you have to expect that when you're in the public, you have no expectation of privacy.
Right.
We got away from that for so long, and criminals were like in alleys and dark parking lots, and people were getting victimized. It's like, why weren't the cops there? Well, because we were handling one other call, or we couldn't be there. But now that we have cameras, even if we can't be there, we have the individual on surveillance, and we have a greater lead of catching the bad guy and preventing it happening to another victim in the future.
That's why when I'm in Venice Beach or something, I was filming, and people are like, you can't film me. I'm like, I can not only film you, you're in a public place, I can stamp a t-shirt and sell it, bitch. I own you.
Yeah, a lot of cops get in trouble for that, right?
Yeah.
You see all those YouTube videos, these First Amendment auditors, and cops go, yeah, you can turn that off.
Oh yeah, those auditors.
No, they don't, yeah.
God.
What do you think of those auditors, though? Because they're kind of cunts, too.
Right,
Yeah,
they're pushing it on purpose, yeah.
Why are they doing it?
Yeah.
What are they doing it for?
Well, they're obviously, I think they don't like cops, and they're like putting you guys to the test every day.
Or maybe one day they felt bad, they felt bullied, and now it's they're just like they have to go out there and catch them or whatever.
I mean, that's probably a lot to do with it too. But they're doing it for content. They're trying to get money.
They're trying to get a reaction out of you and have that.
And so
footage.
I tell my cops, don't get baited in.
Right.
Let them film you.
Yeah, because some of those guys are really getting baited.
Don't feed the trolls. It's really smart.
Because there are videos where it flips the other side, where the cops are actually cool, and all in the comments, that was handled so perfectly. It was a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You won't see a lot of the bad cops getting baited in California. Throughout the country in law enforcement, they say as California goes, so does the rest of the country. We train better than everybody. The experiences happen here in California first.
Cool.
So like when these First Amendment auditors started first coming out and cell phone cameras started first coming out, cops were like, yeah, we don't want to do with it. And they educated themselves. We had to train statewide. But you go to some of these agencies in these podunk cities where they don't train, they don't have the luxury of that kind of experience. Yeah. They're the ones that you see on YouTube and Instagram. It's never LA County. It's never,
Yeah.
So I would say in California you see a lot less of that.
Yeah. Have you had an experience knowing a bad cop internally and like what happened?
Yeah, they got fired. We had a bad use of force, and it was excessive. and luckily it happened in the jail where we had cameras, because this was prior to body cams, and they were taking the inmate out for transfer, and he didn't have his shirt on. They were like, what happened? Why did he have marks on his body? And the officer's report was that he threw himself into the bars. The thing about the bars is they were stationary vertical, and the marks were this way. He got baton striked is what it was. And instead of just putting that in the report and trying to justify that, maybe he was resisting arrest, they would have been fine. They completely lied about it, and they got fired because of it.
Yeah.
Wow. Just fired. Like, no, like, hey, warning. Just fired.
So we have an internal, and that's what a lot of people don't understand, is like, you guys cover up each other. Internal affairs people are the most hated people. They're the Boy Scouts within the police department, right? They get joy, not all of them, but a lot of them get joy out of
Catching a bad apple?
because nobody hates bad cops more than good cops, right? Because they tarnish our name. Imagine all the Catholic priests out there that were embarrassed.
That are good Catholic priests.
That were embarrassed when
man,
that controversy happening.
They did grown women, not little boys.
And then teachers too. You're starting to see all these teachers sleeping with their students. And then how do you? If you're a solid teacher, it's like that makes you look bad. And it's in every profession.
Yeah,
it's not isolated to police work. And that's we feel the same way. We already have a hard time with our reputation. We don't need somebody tarnishing it. And it really is less than 0.5% of the police population that ruin it for everybody else. Yeah. Everybody else does a good job every day. They do heroic things, but you don't see it because it doesn't sell on the news. So.
Right.
What's one of the misunderstood things of either policing or being a police officer that like maybe like the public has an assumption on, and like if only you guys knew about this, then you would understand this?
Yeah, I think it all boils down to whatever the opinion is. It all boils down to they think we're not human. They think we're robots, right? The uniform does have a presence, and the badge does, but underneath all that, we're normal people. If you didn't know I was a cop, you wouldn't think twice about looking at me down the street. But they think because of this uniform, we have this certain code or we have this certain protocol. We're already programmed to want to screw people, and it's not. I mean, it's offensive to be asked a question, an investigative question. You could be innocent, and I can ask you a question. You're like, hey, I know, but I have to ask you this. It's part of my job.
Yeah.
And automatically you're on guard. Well, that's the same reaction that the uniform gives. You ever pull up to a light, and there's a cop next to you, and you're like, you're just looking straight, you're nervous as hell. Yeah, I get that way too.
I do 10 and 2. I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah.
You do that too in another city?
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, right?
But if they pull you over, you can't be like, one of you guys.
And the term professional courtesy exists for a reason.
And he goes, "You look Asian to me."
but I have gotten tickets too, right? We get.
Oh,
tickets.
you've gotten tickets?
I've gotten tickets too.
While they know you're a cop?
Yeah.
Oh, those you hate those guys. Come on, be honest. Be honest.
I deserve those tickets.
Oh, come on, be honest.
You don't go the thin blue line, you dumbass.
Yeah, you really do.
Remember the 90s? The good old days.
Those guys are kind of cocksuckers a little bit.
I rolled a stop, and the week before there was an accident there that resulted in a serious injury. So they had to do strict enforcement.
Oh, so they had.
Yeah.
Okay,
I wasn't
so
gonna fight it.
So you understood it and took
I didn't
it.
have any tickets, so I was able to go to traffic school. I did it.
You're doing rolling a red.
Wow, dude, if I was in traffic school and the guy next to me was a cop, I would trip out, dude.
And the thing is this, look, for every, maybe you were
Air
vindicated
Marshal.
in that one, maybe you didn't do anything, but think about all the other times you did roll stops or went a little fast, right? So
That's true, yeah.
Me and Joe took a motorcycle class, and in the class, they were going around like, why are you taking this class or whatever. Yeah. And there was a LA County sheriff who was on SWAT, been on the force for 20 years. He's like, I've just been riding dirty for 20 years. I think it's about time. I was like, what the fuck? That's tight.
Yeah, paid his dues.
is he a big 6'4", 250-pound white guy?
No, it's a black dude.
Oh, black dude, okay. I know an officer like that.
I guess a lot of cops do that then.
I'm like, hey, that's tight, man.
I've been riding dirty.
You're rolling that red. What are you going so fast for? What are you in such a hurry for?
That's good.
You love to be the cop.
You could do it.
Well, is it worth your life?
So we used to be able to do that, right? Now there's a new law that started January 1 where we have to give you a speech now. Hello, my name is Officer Choe. The reason why I pulled you over is because you violated such and such and such. May I see your license registration?
That's a new protocol?
Yeah, before we used to say, hey, because it was a technique. We would be like, hey, why'd you go so fast?
Oh, that's right.
Or do you know why I stopped you?
Yeah,
And
do you know the reason why I pulled you over?
Right,
Yeah,
they'd admit it, and people were like, hey, you you made me admit
You're
to myself.
tricking me.
Yeah. So now it's like specifically I have to tell you why I pulled you over.
I think that's what people don't understand. It's like as soon as the interaction happens, it's a legal interaction. It's not a personable question. And I think that's where people get like confused is that when you're dealing with the law, everything that you're interacting with here now is he has to ask questions based on what he's like. It's your job to ask these series of questions because you have to treat everybody equally, and you don't know if they're doing something wrong or not. So then if I'm getting interrogated or whatever, I'm like, hey man, why are you singling me out? I'm like, nah, okay, protocol. All right, let's go.
Yeah, it's like when you go to urgent care and they go, how many drinks do you have a day? You're like, oh, how dare you ask me
Mind your
that?
business. That's personal, sir.
Yeah, you're like, I need to know your medical history.
And it's like he can't because then he'll be corrupt. Because he has to now. It's like
Get through the call.
Yeah.
Just answer the. We just want to fill out the citation
Right.
and send you on your way. Because that's not the part. That's not the time for you to argue. You do that in front of a judge.
Yep.
And you're not admitting guilt. You're just promising to appear to argue your case. Then we're not trying to say we were right, you were wrong.
Real quick, has a chick ever offered you sexual favors to get out of a ticket? She never showed a titty or nothing? She never leaned forward suggestively?
you're in the wrong city.